Let's begin, though, with those flaring tensions in Nova Scotia. An emergency debate is set to start very soon on Parliament Hill over possible resolutions after a Mi'kmaq lobster pound was destroyed by fire Saturday. The clashes started last month when Sapaganakading First Nation launched their own fishery out of season. The band says it's exercising a treaty right to earn a moderate living from fishing, recognized by the Supreme Court 21 years ago. But that right, in this case, has yet to be defined.
We should have done this a long time ago, but the government could have also worked on it a little bit harder back then. Regardless, we can't change what has happened, and we'll get it defined for sure.
We want to have peace in our communities. We want the Canadian government to take responsibility for not having peace in our communities.
So where are the talks at? Bernadette Jordan is the Federal Minister of Fisheries. She joins us from the South Shore in Nova Scotia. Hi, Minister Jordan. Good to see you. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks for having me, Vashi.
At the press conference, Minister, you and your cabinet colleagues held earlier today, Minister Mark Miller said that Mi'kmaq fishermen in Nova Scotia have been, quote, let down by police. Do you agree with that characterization?
I think the Mi'kmaq have a right to a moderate livelihood. They have a right to fish safely. I think that we need to make sure that that is what we are all looking for, making sure that we lower the tensions in the area, making sure that people are safe on the water as well as on the land. And that to that end, that is what we are working towards for sure.
Respectfully, that doesn't answer the question. It was specifically whether or not you agree with the characterization that those fishermen that you say have a right to earn a moderate living were let down by police, given all the violence we saw unfold, especially over the last week.
You know, I absolutely condemn the violence that we saw, the intimidation, the fear that we are seeing in the communities is uncalled for. We need to do everything we can. I mean, I can't speak to the Nova Scotia RCMP and what they have done, but we do know that there are ongoing investigations and that, you know, people who are responsible for these actions have to be held accountable.
The government, your government, has responded to a request from the Nova Scotia RCMP to send in more RCMP. When was that request originally made?
That would be a question for Minister Blair, but I believe it was late last week. We have obviously have stepped up and told the province that we are there to make sure that they have the resources they need. Those resources have been deployed from other parts of Atlantic Canada. Of course, we still are in the middle of a global pandemic and have to respect the public health that we have in place here with regards to the Atlantic bubble. So there are people coming from Prince Edward Island and New Brunswick, I believe.
Chief Sack, who we've spoken to earlier on this program, who's also spoken out earlier today, has said that he's not sure whether that's going to, in essence, make him and people around him feel any more protected. And he asked the government to consider sending in the military. Is that something your government is considering?
Once again, Vashi, I think that's a question for Minister Blair. I know that the First Nations need to be protected. I know that they need to feel safe as they exercise their moderate livelihood fishery. Those are priorities for us. Actually, from day one, the priority that I've had is to reduce tensions that we're seeing in Southwest Nova Scotia, is to make sure that people are safe on the water and make sure that they are safe in their communities. That is going to be the ongoing priority that we have. And, we want to make sure that people are safe wherever they are, and nobody should be afraid to go to work.
Minister, if your responsibility was to reduce tensions, how much responsibility do you and your government bear for what we've seen unfold then over the last week?
I want to be very clear, Vashi, that there is absolutely no excuse for any of the behaviors that we've seen happen. It doesn't matter, what is being said in the communities. It does not give anyone a right to threaten, to commit acts of violence, to intimidate people. It's totally uncalled for, and it's something that really needs to stop.
But you have said for a number of weeks that you're engaged in talks, and yet whatever is happening behind the scenes, which you also won't disclose because of confidentiality, as I understand, has clearly not resulted in a de-escalation of tensions. In fact, the exact opposite has happened.
I still believe firmly that the best way forward for this, to resolve the issues that we have is through negotiations. We are currently at the table with Sapaganakading. We're having good, positive conversations. We are also having, good negotiations. We are also having conversations with the commercial harvesters to hear what their concerns are, to make sure that they're listened to as well. These are ongoing dialogues that are extremely important in order to move this forward. You know, everybody wants a peaceful solution, but also everybody wants to make sure that the fishery is sustainable for the long term. And that has to be that has to be the underpinning issue for a DFO, is to make sure that we have a sustainable, safe, long-term fishery.
How long ago did those discussions begin, and how frequent have they been?
I would say I've been meeting with commercial harvesters for months now, as well as with First Nations since I was first appointed Minister of Fisheries and Oceans. These are
specific to this issue.
Specific to moderate livelihood fishery. Yes, I've been in conversations with First Nations. I mean, more recently with Sipekne'katik specifically. More recently, more ongoing negotiations. But these are conversations that I've been having since I became the fisheries minister. And actually, I will say also that before I was the fisheries minister, I met with commercial harvesters on a regular basis to talk to them about the concerns that they had, because I represent an area that has a large commercial industry fishery. You
say, though, Sipekne'katik, you've only been recently speaking to. Can you be more specific about that? And I'll tell you why I'm asking. It's not just sort of on an expedition here. The opposition has leveled a very clear criticism of your government, that you have been absent from this issue, and that is why we are where we're at. What evidence do you have? Can you provide our viewers to counter that?
I have been meeting with First Nations, with Sipekne'katik, since the onset of these particular issues that have been going on in Southwest Nova.
A month ago, 2 weeks ago?
No, over a month. 6 weeks. So it's kind of. I'm trying to think exactly what the dates were, but I couldn't give you that right now. But I will say it's at least 6 weeks. That we have been in these talks with the First Nations communities, with Chief Sack. Him and I meet on a regular basis. I probably speak to Chief Sack on a weekly basis. Commercial harvesters and I, as well as my officials. People from the department have been engaged with the commercial harvesters on a daily basis in a lot of cases. So these are not things that I have been silent on. We do not negotiate in public. These are ongoing conversations that need to be had, and they need to be had in a way that respects the confidentiality of the agreements in a nation-to-nation negotiation.
I completely understand respecting confidentiality. I think, though, in essence, while Canadians watch what's unfolding over the past number of days and the really violent acts unfolding, you're essentially asking them to take your word, right? And that's a difficult pill to swallow for people who are watching what they're watching.
And all I can say, Vashi, is that we have been engaged with these communities. This is something that has been 21 years in the making. This is not something that has just happened overnight. This is a long-term, long-standing, deeply personal issue for many communities. This is something that, we have seen escalation over the last number of years on. It's unfortunate that it has now come to this point where we've seen communities that have, been seeing the violence that we've seen in Southwest Nova Scotia, and we need to make sure that we find the path forward for a peaceful resolution to this very difficult issue.
I know you can't or you won't describe the details, but what is your sense, if you were to impart it on viewers watching tonight, of the closeness of some sort of resolution or the possibility even of one?
I will say that we're having very positive conversations with Sipekne'katik. They're ongoing. They are, we are working forward. I believe Chief Sack would probably say the same thing if you were to ask him. These are conversations that need to be had. And I will also say that I've met with the rest of the First Nations chiefs in Nova Scotia as well, as early as yesterday, with the other 12 chiefs from Nova Scotia. So this is not something that, as I said before, you can negotiate in public. It's extremely important that those negotiations stay on a nation-to-nation basis until we come to an agreement. And, sadly, what we don't want to see is the acts of violence and the challenges that we're seeing with regards to, people who are intimidating people and threatening people and causing these acts in these communities to stall those negotiations, because we need to find the way forward.
Have they stalled the negotiations, or do you still consider them moving?
At this point, I think we're still moving forward, but I do worry about what happens when people are afraid. I do worry about the safety of community members as well as of the Mi'kmaq fishers. We do need to make sure that they are protected, and which is one of the reasons why we've approved more resources for the province of Nova Scotia for more RCMP in the area.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Minister Jordan. I appreciate your time this evening, as always.
Okay, thank you, Vashi.
The federal government is sending more RCMP officers to Nova Scotia, where tensions between Indigenous and non-Indigenous commercial fishers have come to a head. On Saturday, a Mi'kmaq lobster pound was burnt to the ground in a suspicious fire. Last week, hundreds of lobster traps were lost after non-Indigenous commercial fishermen cut lines and destroyed buoys. Negotiations continue, as you heard there, between the federal government and the Mi'kmaq over their constitutional right to fish for a, quote, moderate livelihood. What's the latest on those talks, though? Mike Sack is the chief of Sapaganaknik First Nation. He joins us from Indian Brook, Nova Scotia. Hi, Chief Sack. Appreciate you making the time again for our program. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You just heard that clip there. We interviewed Minister Jordan a few minutes ago on the show. She described the conversations or the negotiations between your First Nation and her and the government as good, positive conversations. Is that how you would characterize them?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely very good conversations, good progress. They're not negotiations, though, unfortunately. We're not negotiating a treaty right, not one bit. We are discussing back and forth on other factors of it, but the treaty right, not at all.
Can I get you to expand on that a little bit? What do you mean by you're not negotiating the treaty? Like, I'm taking from that you have a treaty right as defined, of course, by this definition, by this decision, the Supreme Court decision, and so that's not up for negotiation. What exactly is the conversation about then?
We're talking about our management plan, and at some point we'll narrow it down to exactly how many people will be fishing and how many tags, just the details in it. We realized we had that right, to self-govern ourselves, and we're exercising that as well. We're just looking to, take the reins on it ourselves, but we were going to work with DFO. We proposed a joint study, to ensure the safety of, or the longevity of lobster, and that they'll always be there for generations to come. I appreciate Minister Jordan today talking about the fact that the stocks are strong in the industry, so that's good news there.
So when you, when I guess people talk about a quote unquote resolution or definition of certain numbers, do you think that is something that could be arrived at in the near future, or do you think that's going to take some time?
No, I don't think it's going to take much time. We're optimistic it won't, and especially with all of the talks going on, and they have that meeting tonight they have, and it's in everybody's best interest if this is resolved quickly. And at that point, the commercial industry will know exactly where we stand, and they'll realize that we're not unrolling this big fisheries plan.
In the meantime, when we spoke last week, it was before all the violence that took place over the weekend, but there had already been quite a bit during the week. How are you doing? How is your community doing with all of that right now?
Yeah, it's rough. Our community has sent down members from our health center just to make sure that everybody's, taking care of themselves. And it's a stressful time, discouraging by days, but we're pulling together, and definitely makes us stronger as people. And it's pulling our nation together as well.
You also spoke last week about how you felt unprotected at the time. The federal government today says that they've approved that request from the province to send more RCMP officers. Do you feel that will make a difference for you and your community?
Yeah, it's a kind of a two double sort of thing. We're very happy that they're coming and that there's a lot of police there now. Would have been nice to have them last week, of course, but now our focus is on the water. We want to make sure that our people are safe on the water as well. There's one Coast Guard vessel out there, but that was out there back when the hundreds of vessels surrounded our people on the water. So, it's still not completely safe yet.
Is your understanding that there will be any more protection on the water, or is it just, I think the government had said that there should be more on the water and land, but what is your understanding?
Yeah, I watched the news today too on that press release there, and I thought they said that they had a boat in the water like they had before, and there needs to be more boats that could, arrest if there's anything going on or whatever.
You had also talked about some conversations that you yourself and some relationships that you have with commercial fishermen who themselves were feeling kind of upset or I guess frustrated at the actions of others. Is that line of communication open right now, Chief Sack, at all? Or are there conversations taking place to try, I guess, and and minimize any more violence, or stop, I guess would be the best case scenario?
Yeah, so every day I get a lot of emails, messages, phone calls, from commercial fishermen as well. Any chance I get, if somebody comes at me with a respectful approach, I take the time and hear them out and tell them my concerns, and try to help everybody de-escalate the whole problem here. Last thing we want is more tensions to rise, but it's hard to do, from their side when there's nobody really pushing for them. I guess they feel very frustrated that way, but at the same time, they're not willing to step up in front of their people and say, yeah, this doesn't sound so bad. We respect it. So it's hard.
Last week, there hadn't been arrests. Now there has been. Do you think that will sort of send a message to those who are inclined to be violent? Like, do you feel like there is a different message being sent because of that?
Yeah, 100%. And after we dropped our traps in the water, I thought if they start laying charges then, all of this wouldn't have happened. Somebody almost lost their life. But I'm very optimistic that more charges will come. There needs to be a lot more. We're putting together all of our video footage from our social media and passing that along to the RCMP with hopes that, people get prosecuted for any crimes they committed. The other part I'd like to say, I forgot what the last point was, that, there's been 300 people at their protests, but there's at least 3,000 or 4,000 workers they would have. So it's only 10% of their people, that's kind of really at us, I guess. So I'm not trying to paint them all with the same brush. It's just frustrating for us.
For sure. I can imagine. Look, we're about an hour and a half away from the emergency debate that's going to be held on Parliament Hill on this very subject beginning. A lot of politicians are going to take part in that debate. What is your message to them, for those who are watching this right now?
Our message to that is to all of this racism has come about from, hidden agendas type of thing. We have 550 traps in the water. They put 400,000 traps in the water. There's a big difference there in what we're doing. So, Minister Jordan reaffirmed today that lobster stocks are strong. We have a very modest fisheries plan. I don't feel that we're in the wrong here at all. I actually know we're not. And it's very disheartening how Nova Scotia kind of fell apart down that end just over something so small.
Okay, Chief Sack, I appreciate you making the time. I know it's very busy for you, so thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.